We'll call the City Council special meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Pittman,
Excused? She's going to be here, but she is delayed.
Jermaine,
Here.
Present.
Felder,
Present.
Mayor Clark.
Present. So we have our special meeting before our regular meeting, and we have a couple items on here. And there's Councilwoman Vining is here as well. And Vince, is there anything before we start, or just want to go move forward?
Just the requested motion to enter into closed session.
Okay.
Litigation update and land acquisition.
Okay, very well. Councilman Lamore.
Yes, Your Honor. I make a motion that we enter a closed session to discuss land acquisition and pending litigation involving the following cases: OFTH 172, LLC, Joseph Emerson, Nathan Carr, Tina Marie Carroll, Pastor Elizabeth Jackson Freeman.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini, to go into executive closed session for the litigation update, items that were stated, as well as land acquisition. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Vining,
Yeah.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Find my paperwork here.
Sure that Millward's ready for us.
Okay.
Yeah, we're ready to go. Okay, yep.
Do we need a motion to go back into
Yes, we do.
regular, not that, this isn't a special meeting?
Yeah, go back into the, open for this special meeting, session.
Motion to go back into open session for special meeting.
There's a motion and a second. Roll, please.
Vining?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. So, Vince, looking to our items here on the special meeting, we have a couple items that we're going to have for discussion. The first one.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mayor has some appointments for the upcoming vacancies or term limits with the Citizens Planning Commission. We've had some discussion regarding ordinance where we adopted term limits on it, and there was some concern with the chairperson, Steve Schwartz. And as we looked at it, I think we were comfortable that he could be appointed for another 3-year term. Talking, on behalf of the mayor, but also we just thought it would be important to put this out here for discussion. So I'll let Mayor walk with it.
Thanks, Vince. So, previous council, there was discussion on the planning commission as well as other boards. As we know, that we've had to reduce the size of boards. Planning commission used to have 9 persons on it, and there was multiple at-large positions. And as we were trying to get appointments and fill those, that was reduced to 7. And part of that discussion was discussion on term limits, and that was one that the council had passed for the planning commission. We don't have that for all of our commissions. But so I got looking at that, and then as Vince and I chatted, the planning commission, as it gets on down through membership, compensation, appointments, terms, under section 2219, section C, it talks about the term limits and when they initiate and when they started. So I'm just going to read it because it's probably easiest. I think we handed it out, but just so you have it, it says, commencing with any terms already commenced on February 1st, 2019, or any terms commencing thereafter, members shall serve no more than 3 consecutive terms, including the completion of any unexpired terms. And this is the part that's we highlighted. Any term served prior to February 1st, 2019 shall not be considered when determining the member's qualification to serve under this section, and goes on about the period of time. So the question is, we have people that are on planning commission that are getting to where they are in their 3rd term, but by that being added in when this was established in term, this does not apply. So it wasn't going retroactive back to count the previous term. So I asked Vince and we talked to bring this just for discussion in case you hear something from whether members or other people that, well, you have term limits now, they shouldn't be appointed. So I am looking at the appointments. As we know, our appointments are January and June, and we have several that are coming up in January, including the Planning Commission, and one that would have served terms but wouldn't be negated from being reappointed. So I'm just giving that as a foundation as I make the appointments as they come forward here for our next meeting a couple weeks. I'll have appointments. I don't know if that confuses anybody or understand. Basically, we have term limits now, but they don't apply or become active until 2019, and that's when those 3 consecutive terms start by how it was passed by council in 2019, I guess it was.
So my understanding that Chairman Schwartz, this does not apply to him because he was one of the, I think he's the only member that was on board the CPC prior to 2019.
Right, and by adding this, that he would not be negated from being reappointed. And I haven't had, I have conversations with all members when their appointment comes up to have a discussion, and as well as staff, as well as checking attendance records before I make appointments. But I thought it was important to bring that up because in case he does, there's a recommendation for reappointment, it does not apply to the term limit issue. So it's just more for awareness. Make sense? Vince, I don't know if there's anything further, but there's other appointments that'll be coming up on our next meeting as well, because the January appointments take effect at the end of the month, not the beginning of the month. And then June is also June 30th is when those appointments come up. So it's a little transition time, so we get people appointed, the person finishes through that month, and then the new, if there's a new appointment, they start then at the next meeting at the following month. So that's it. And if you need copy, I think the copies were available. If not, I'll make them available. But, well, I think that's it on that one, Vince.
Okay. We had, other items for discussion as time permits. If have Dr. Everly come up, Human Resource Director, to give council an update regarding the manager search process and go over the position ad and profile. Julie?
Clerk Lavoie. It's a pleasure to update you on this exciting, it's a huge responsibility that we all have coming before us here. So if we go back in December, we talked about the city manager search and Mr. Pastu, our current manager's intent to retire in the spring. So with that, we laid out a timeline with different phases, which really needs to launch. It seemed like we had a while then, but it needs to launch in January of this new year. So when we think back about that timeline, the first phase, phase one, was really developing that profile of what does the next city manager need to look like? What would that person possess in the line of physical capabilities, also personal characteristics, education and skills. And what you have in front of you is a draft job description of that role. So since we shared some preliminary information with you in December, what we've done is we've really looked at, what are the day-to-day responsibilities of our city manager? What comes up? And so as things have come up on a day-to-day basis, we've looked at our profile and looked at our list of responsibilities here to make sure it was as comprehensive as we possibly could. So you do have that draft. I want to draw your attention to a few items in the draft, just to review them. So it's very common for a draft posting, to have an introduction to the community. So we have a brief introduction, but this won't be the only piece that we put out that really captures the essence of our community here. Our communications director, Mrs. Egan, is also working on a piece that will complement this, and I know her work speaks for itself, and it's sure to be very stunning and attractive and capture all the strengths of Monroe. Next, we have a list of job responsibilities that the city manager executes on a daily basis. So certainly there are many, many, many more than what are listed, but these are the key responsibilities, the actions that are expected of our city manager overall in a broad, looking at it broadly, to operate and serve as that chief administrative officer of our municipality. Then on page 2, this will look familiar to you. We reviewed this briefly in December, and thank you for all of your feedback, and thanks to many of the staff have commented on this. So we and certainly when the citizens call, we take into account what their needs are. And we feel like this candidate profile has really hits on a very, very important, the very important services and the very important leadership qualities that our city manager possesses, and what we'd hope to find in the next city manager. And then moving on to the next page, under the qualifications, we studied not only our past postings that we've had here in the city of Monroe, but we also did a market study of the qualifications that many of the municipalities most recently who have posted have included, and then thought about, and certainly city manager Pastou was essential in this, thought about really the qualifications that need to be in place in order to deliver everything we've just seen on those previous pages. And that's where that list has come from. So when we think about the audience for this posting, the candidates who we hope will be enticed to apply, we definitely wanted to include a broad picture of the benefits that are included in our city manager's contract. So we've included those on that same page. Some broad information about the schedule, although we know Vince's schedule has the potential to be 24/7, and a city manager candidate understands that. We wanted to highlight the salary as well. So this too is our recommendation for the posting. Looking at the market analysis, we actually drew upon a study that was already in place for the city of Monroe. And we feel like this range gives council the opportunity to look at the individual finalists' qualification, look at their experience, and doesn't tie you to any one set number, but allows the range for you to pivot within. And our residency is listed there, and then of course the physical requirements in the work environment, because we want to be clear with candidates about those. So then, just as part of this overview, going to the last page, we will be handling the application process through our website, and certainly the letter of interest and resume with some specific content will be required. I also wanted to draw your attention to another requirement that is going to be part of this, and I have to thank Terry Davis from our informational technologies area, because he has worked with our website and with Laserfiche, which is one of the programs we use quite regularly here in the city, and he has created an infrastructure that will allow the candidate to upload video. So for every candidate, you're going to be able to capture a sample of what that looks like when they're talking about a qualification or something they'd like to bring to our city, or some dreams and visions that they have for our city. So it's one thing to get a feel for the candidate's writing. It's a very, very different skill for them to show you how they would present it and speak about it to our citizens. So all of that, and going back to our timeline, all of that will have to be turned in by an interested candidate by February 13th. And then the timeline that is listed on the last page would be what happens after the 13th. And certainly with any timeline, when you do a search, you always try to stress that the timelines are subject to change. Just because we may have to juggle things around if we have an overwhelming number of applicants, for instance, that may take longer, or we may have to add dates for the interview process. But from what we've studied and how typical searches move along, we think that this timeline here would give us, the structure that we would need to complete the exercises in a way that's thorough and comprehensive, and certainly does great justice to the responsibility that you have in choosing the next city manager. So with that, we'd like to open it up for discussion or questions. This is yours to look at. We'd like to post before the end of the week, so certainly you could take your time and even look at it beyond this evening.
Yes, Councilwoman Viney?
Can you explain to me what a public interview is?
Sure.
Please.
Yep. So, because there'll be a portion of the process that you'll have to handle in closed session. So when candidates apply, most candidates often ask for their application to be confidential. And it's understood that it can remain confidential to the point at which council has to interview the candidate, because you are required by law through the Open Meetings Act to handle those interviews in public. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we wanted to try to be fully transparent so that they knew they can request confidentiality, but at the time that they will be interviewed, that will be a public interview. And so the meeting would have to be posted that we're doing those interviews. If we have public who would like to join us, that would have to be allowed. And so that's what that means. Mhm. Sure.
So Julie, what you're saying during the public interviews, this is something where we'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the candidate.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And you will see, we will have a we'll have a committee that organizes the candidate information for you. So it's organized and presented to you in a way that makes sense. But you will see every candidate's information and know exactly what they turned in and who applied. Mhm. Any other questions?
Yeah, I
or
do.
comments?
On April 3rd, are we ratifying an employment agreement at that time and point? That's the plan, or is that just basically putting it up for the public notice?
On April 3rd, and this is a very rigorous timeline that we've set up here. On April 3rd, our hope would be that you've already authorized us to negotiate on March 27th. We've met with the candidate you have selected, and we hope that we can deliver that candidate's draft employment agreement for your consideration on April 3rd.
Other thoughts or questions?
City Manager Pastu, is there anything that I didn't add? Okay.
Pretty much lays out the process, that is typically followed with a lot of communities, in their search process. So it's pretty comprehensive, I think. And
I guess I'll just a comment back to Councilwoman Viney's comment about the confidentiality and open meetings. It is important to abide by that and understand the importance, because people may apply yet they've not shared back at their home location that they may be seeking or searching. Doesn't mean they've made the commitment 100%. And the next thing but when they get to that certain point, it is public, and then gives them whoever that may be the opportunity to let their current employer know that they have applied without doing it at the very start. If they don't, so to speak, make the cut down to the final interviews, it allows them to have that confidentiality and comfort in knowing they're not in the employment they currently have, which is probably in a good status too. So, Councilman Germaini.
What is I forgot what I was going to ask.
The finalist performance task.
So often, what happens, we wanted to carve this out in just in the event that council would be interested in something like that. I believe Councilman Germaini, you are referring to the timeline on March 21st through 27th. So at that point in time, what will have happened is you will have reviewed the applicants, you will have selected who you want to interview, you will have gone through one round of interviewing those top candidates who you were interested in. And often, if there's a question or group council is wrestling between, not literally wrestling, but thinking through. Let's say there are 2 or 3 candidates that you really like, but you're just not sure if one rises to the top. So a performance task could be a next step that helps you to see the candidate in a little bit different way than a standard interview. So it might be like a presentation. It might be that we set up a mock situation, some kind of simulation, and you get to watch that candidate work with department heads, let's say. So something that really gives you a different view than what you have already seen in the panel interview.
A role play.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other
Okay.
questions? Not. Dr. Everly, I want to thank you for, and all the staff and the support that went into presenting this for us this evening and having a template to work from and a timeline, which is very beneficial. And I have to make a comment. The responsibilities and how they were delineated here after the opening is really, to me, was informative. And I like the structure in which it was, because as you read those responsibilities, every item is an action of what a person is being looked for. I mean, obviously it is the chief administrative officer. But as you go down, it leads, recommends, forecasts, initiates, supervises, conveys, communicates, advises, supports, engages. Action items. Action items is what a person should be able to know that this is what we're looking for, but also hopefully for the applicants, that these will be things that we're looking at through the process and the interview, but also from Councilwoman Germaini's question, when you talk about the item that's on there, if need be, we'd have the opportunity for that as well, to see that in action, so to speak, as well, because people can say what they're going to do, but those type of exercise, if it comes to be, it has to be on their experience and background of what they have done and what they would do. So there's a difference. So I appreciate it. I love this, the way it's laid out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the presentation. Excellent. Mr. Pastu, anything further on this or other?
So one other item, obviously tonight we have for consideration approval of the refuse agreement, recycling agreement with Stevens. But as we've talked about, one of the things that we're going to be looking at going forward is how we handle some of the residential units with multi-tenants. And while I don't have anything formal tonight, again, I think I've shared with you is that, I would recommend that, the first unit be not charged, but anything afterwards would have a unit price. We may back off some cost associated with the fact that yard waste is a component of the overall structure. We've got to put a value to that. There's only one yard, although there may be multiple tenants. Those type of considerations. And then also the other thing with it is, Mr. Lewis and I were talking today, is that each of these residential rental units may have different circumstances. And the current ordinance related to solid waste gives the manager a great deal of discretion related to how services are delivered. So if you've got a residential unit with 5 tenants in it, we may have come up with something different than what we have. But I'm looking at a broader framework where you provide some guidance, but generally one like your buy into the whole concept. certainly would like to do it as part of the budget process so that by the time I'm leaving at the end of April, that we have something in place that gets incorporated into the adopted budget itself. So in the next couple meetings, we'll probably bring you some items for consideration that we think, is fair and equitable, for the service that's provided, because it is a different, it's a little different, obviously, than a single-family owner-occupied residential unit. And so they do create an additional demand for service, and certainly working in consultation with our contractor that, to work with some of those solutions. But some of them may very well be on a property by property, maybe a little different depending on how much room they have for the carts and what have you. So, but I just wanted to let you know we'll be bringing. I've talked about it before, but now we're starting to kind of whittle it down a little bit, even more detail. So,
Questions or comments on that? I know that we have it on our council agenda at a regular meeting following. Councilwoman Vining?
I just get a little nervous because if you're a renter in a multi, of course, I feel like the owners are gonna just pass all those costs on to the tenants, which rent is already super high right now. So I'd be interested to see what the cost and that is. It just makes me a bit nervous because if I have a property with 10 units, of course, I'm not gonna pay for all of those. As the owner, I'm gonna have to pass the cost on, so.
I would think under a worst, I mean, it's, again, if you look at what the cost for the full-blown service, it's what, $160 a year, roughly in that ballpark. What you see afterwards, if you break that down roughly, it's not going to be more than $15 per month. It shouldn't be. And then if we back off some of the yard waste aspect of it, because you can only have one property, it'll be probably lower than that. So it's a legitimate concern, but I think from an equity standpoint, they're paying for the service that the building and the use demands. So.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think that's where the analysis then comes back in, so we know that with the contractor that with the contract, we know what that means. I think there could be some variations, but as long as fundamentally and the foundationally we're looking at them in equally, then I think it would work out. But I will be interested, as I think council is, what that might be and what it might look like, and I think that's the discussion we have. But obviously, we're coming forward this evening is trying to get things in place because of the transition that'll need to occur in the time frame to do that. So,
Yep.
Other questions? Councilman Felder.
Yes. I just want to clarify briefly that whatever fees are paid, and TBD on that, that those are paid to the refuse fund, correct? That
Yeah.
would be,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely.
So it
Yeah.
would stay within the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't fall somewhere else. No, it'll go directly into the refuse fund.
Other questions? Okay. Vince, anything further?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. Clerk Lavoie, anything that you might have? Okay. Councilman Lamore, you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't mind, or I wouldn't mind if you would go over 3841 real quickly, just to kind of clarify some things regarding that. I know that we're talking about $85,000 going to OHM advisors. What exactly, is that for design, or is that for basically just to put something in front of us to decide on?
Well, it's an analysis, and I'll have Patrick Lewis, our city engineer, public services director, talk a little bit more about what the scope is. But clearly, in order to do that, you have to have a sense of what's the traffic volume during peak periods of time. And I think, we're looking at 3 different time periods, morning, midday, and then peak evening as well. And a lot of that, if you look on Front and First Street, will drive, how it'll affect Monroe. And so we've got to take those traffic, the traffic engineer will take that into consideration regarding how that flow will work. They've got, modeling systems that they can use to determine what level of service would come as a result of some of the different scenarios and analysis that would go along with that. But, Patrick and I talked a little bit about it. It may not, if we approve it tonight, we still probably won't be till sometime in February, depending on when the right time with the weather for doing the traffic counts, to make sure that there's validity to the numbers themselves. And then it'll take some time to review that and put it into the form that they have, electronic form, to do some of the modeling that goes with that. So that's what you get for it. And again, it's a pretty comprehensive study, but it also includes, looking at some of the road geometrics at Front and First, where it meets there just across from the post office, because that's an integral part of how this thing, it wouldn't function without it, to be honest with you, if you're considering a two-way conversion. So I think by and large, what am I missing, Mr. Lewis?
Vince, as Patrick comes forward, I think as a comparison, as council here in recent years, we've had the discussion with when we had 7th and 8th Street and then at Cass and Harrison. Very much similar was what I see this as, because when you go through the proposal here in the core tasks, it's data collection, existing conditions, and of course, future conditions. One thing I see different on this one that is going to take some additional analysis and work is the geometric analysis, not just the intersection of West First and West Front, but even also how it impacts at Monroe Street. And as that moves forward, and because I know that there's been discussion being the state highway, is there space that for those streets for the turning maneuvers and stuff, and what geometric design that may require as well. So I think that's something that's probably additional from what we've done before, that I think is, as I read through the proposal, is some of the focus they had on that as well. Brian?
To add to that and kind of clarify more or less is the stakeholders' involvement with this process. And I mean the building owners that are along First and Front Street in the corridor we're discussing, changing from one-way to two-way. Are we going to involve them as well?
I think it would be a mistake not to. Very similar with Cass and Harrison, that we obviously let them know. We actually had separate meetings with them in advance of it being presented to City Council. There may be some sort of format like that for its review. Maybe the first presentation should be with City Council, but after that, you still got a period of time to make some decisions, nothing immediate with it thereafter.
The thing I was going to add, Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. The main thing I was going to add was kind of to refer to the geometrics as similar to like a schematic design. We've had several projects that we've taken to the schematic design level, and I think that's what we'd be looking at here, the parallel. And we'd also be looking for an order of magnitude cost for what those would be too, because that's the other part of this is the next path forward needs to know, we need to know what we're doing, how much it's going to cost, how that will be funded. So that's what we're looking at. Now, we're not going to have detailed design drawings that's going to say the curb radius is this or the lane widths are this, but it's going to be what geometric options will work, and then some of it is the even getting down to the level of traffic signals, like with MDOT. So I will say this on the public involvement: I had them add a few more public meetings into it. We just had a couple bare bones. We added about 3 or 4, I think, into the study. But I will say we'll probably get this to a point where there's something to review, because the difficulty with such a large number of stakeholders is if we just throw it up and say, okay, what does everybody see for this area? We might get 20 different answers. So we at least need to model how a two-way conversion could work, because that was a big part of the downtown master planning process, which, while it was 4 years ago, did engage many of the same stakeholders. So absolutely we'll engage them, but I don't want everybody to think that it's going to be at the very front end, because it will be very difficult to proceed until we have something to show everyone. So, and there'll be multiple options to look at too.
Yeah, the other thing I think we're kind of missing here is Washington Street. Currently is one way just in between First and Front, and that's something we have to consider as being converted to two-way if you're going to convert Front to two-way and First Street to two-way.
That is included in that. The presumption is we're looking at Cass and Washington, those single blocks, but because of the traffic volume on those, the lion's share of the operations study needs to be front first.
Agreed.
The presumption is Washington and Cass will kind of just function as those connector roads, and so we don't anticipate major operational challenges at any of those intersections. So while it doesn't appear at first glance that those are included, I think that's implied if it's not. We know it's in there because of the amount of time we spent scoping it. It may not be apparent just from reading it, though. But yes, those are considered as well.
And another thing to consider as well is, I think we've had this discussion in the past where if we consider this to be a failure going two-way, is it possible to easily convert back to the one-way situation it was once before?
Well, easily, it would be a lot easier to convert it from two-way back to one-way than it would be the other direction, because right now you've got some intersections that are designed for one-way traffic, like Washington at front.
Right.
It sort of throws you in the direction that needs you to go. Once those go to two-way, those intersections would have to be squared off, and you could certainly convert those back to one-way, but they wouldn't have the same geometry that implies the one-way. So I think the answer is it wouldn't be terribly difficult to convert back to one-way, other than the traffic signals would probably, again, have to be modified to some degree, or at the very least, the heads removed in the direction that you no longer had travel. So it'd be much more expensive than reversing course on 7th, 8th, Cass Harrison would be, certainly.
So that intersection you just talked about would be part of that geometric consideration design. Would it be? You know, as we've talked about this at different meetings, the sessions. Of course, the downtown master plan, the River Raisin Heritage Corridor plan included this discussion, as did, of course, the DDA's plan as well. So there's been a lot of analysis and discussion that's come before this time frame, but it brings forward today as we've started this process in the downtown, and even our goals and objectives talks about our downtown. And so I know they have all those plans as well that they have for information. So I look forward to August discussion at the meeting here, see what happens next meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Bastu,
Nothing else, Your Honor.
any final comments from council? So we have about 8 minutes. So I think at this time, we need a motion, don't we? Because it's a special meeting. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn special meeting.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Vining to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk. Please call the roll. She's excused.
Here.
Lamore. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Present. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for the glorious wonders so visible around us, the beauty of the river and the lake shore, the heritage of our city, and above all, the beauty of our people, the citizens of this city. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
First item is the approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, any from
Nothing to add,
administration?
Your Honor. No
Looking to
change.
council, any adjustments or amendments to the agenda? If not, a motion?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as written.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini. Clerk, please call the roll.
Stilgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $604,286.55, 604,286.55.
Thank you. Is there an item on the, or any item on the consent agenda the council wishes has pulled for further discussion? We have the minutes and the payments. Seeing none, is there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, Councilman Felder.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and recommendations carried out.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and a recommendation carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stilgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item, we have nothing under presentations, communications, or public hearings. So the next items would be under council action. Item 3840, award a 5-year refuse recycling contract.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not sure there's much more to add. We've talked about this for the last couple of months, and we're recommending a 5-year agreement with Stevens Disposal and Recycling for our refuse recycling, yard waste collection with a 3-year option. So,
Thank you. And I know that our work session, just, or our special meeting, I should say, just prior to this, there was conversation and some questions asked as well. So I'll see if there's any questions or comments from council for administration. Councilman Felder.
Brief point of clarification. I just, for the sake of the public watching here tonight, I know that I've gotten requests and emails regarding this item. I'm sure many of the other council members have as well. This contract does indeed still provide door-to-door drop-off, curbside recycling in a 96-gallon container. Is that my understanding?
that is the proposal accepted, yes.
Thank you for the benefit of the public at home.
Yes, and also the proposals that were received and how they were analyzed and the information there on cost, that's available within the packet as well for those, and it's here before us this evening. Thank you, Councilman. Other comments from council members? If there's none, there's a motion to be in order.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
Make a-
Councilman Moore.
Thank you. Make a motion that the attached 5-year contract beginning July 1st, 2023 be awarded to Stevens Disposal and Recycling Service Incorporated with additional 3-year option to provide municipal refuse, recycling, and yard waste services in the city of Monroe, and that the mayor and clerk treasurer be authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the city based on final review by the city attorney.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 3840, the award the 5-year refuse recycling contract as presented. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please. I
next-
guess you should ask, Vince, any further comments, or?
No.
I guess, thank you for being here this evening as well. Thank you. Yeah.
The next item is 3841, Downtown Geometric Modifications and Traffic Operations Study Award.
Mr. Pastu?
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, we talked a little bit about this in the work session and even at our last meeting about a professional service agreement with OHM Advisors to do traffic engineering related to the operational analysis of converting Front and First Street in the downtown area from one-way traffic to two, which includes an analysis of Monroe Street in the downtown Washington, and more importantly, I think also looking at the road geometrics at First and Front in front of the post office, and how all of that will work, and what level of service will come about through the various alternatives that council will have to consider in the future. The DDA is contributing up to $50,000 for this project, and it has been part of their downtown master plan. We're asking for approval of the $85,000 professional service agreement with another $13,000 to be thousand associated with the contingency for this project if need be. So with that, we'd recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions from council members or administration? Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Vince, just clarification, the 85,000, is that our part of the 50%?
That's the whole package. We will administer it, but the DDA is putting in 50,000.
Up to 50,000.
Yes. Yep.
So in other words, if it costs 100, we're obligated for 50.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll just make a comment because I know we discussed this. There were some really good questions at the council special meeting just prior to this meeting here. But one of the items that, as I had mentioned, I had the Downtown Development Authority, the Downtown Master Plan and Parking Study, the Citizens Planning Commission has reviewed and recommended this. Also, the River Raisin Heritage Corridor Plan talks about these conversions. Items that have been talked about here as we've continued to progress to this point, and is before us at this time. And this, I'll say, study award provides us the information we need to make final decisions. No decisions are made until we get that, to see what those analysis, where we are, where we're going, and also what the geometric designs may be. And what I think was brought up there as well, it also comes with that as if implemented, how, and then of course how much. So we have those things that would come out of this, and you can't do it until you understand it. So that's just my comment. And there's any other comments? If there's none, a motion would be in order. Oh, Councilman Stilgry.
Move that the city council award professional services contract for traffic operations and geometric modifications analysis of the downtown area to OHM Advisors in the amount of $85,000. That a total of $98,000 be awarded to provide for a 15% contingency. That the formal professional services selection process be waived, and that the Director of Engineering and Public Services be authorized to execute any necessary agreements on behalf of the city once the DDA board has approved 50% of the project.
Motion by Councilman Stelgray, supported by Councilwoman Germaini, that the Downtown Geometric Modifications and Traffic Operations Study Award. Item 3841. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item.
I have no other items this evening.
No other items. It's January. We'll start with Councilwoman Stelgrave.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I don't really have much to say except Happy New Year, and let's hope this is a wonderful, fantastic year.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining. Okay. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. Happy New Year to everybody, and I'm looking forward to all the accomplishments we're going to be making in 2023. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. 2022 is behind us. 2023, I'm really looking forward to a lot of projects at hand here for the city, and there's going to be a lot of frustration on our city residents. I ask them to be patient because we have a big project, especially over in St. Mary's Garden area, but it's going to bring so much better improvement to your lifestyle that I think you'll be very glad that it happened, and it's going to be well worth the wait. So be patient with us. A lot of good things happening here. Look forward to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, sir. Hope everyone had a good holiday. Just want to welcome everyone back. Got some exciting things to come.
Okay, just a couple of these are kind of reminders that are upcoming in our January calendar. I thought it'd be an opportunity to review that. And as we are a partner with SEMCOG, we're also a partner with TMCOG. Their TMCOG's General Assembly is scheduled for Friday, January 20th. It's obviously near the Levis Commons area. It's a morning session. If council members have an interest to attend, please contact Pat Weaver so we can get you registered. And deadline is January 13th to do that. I will be there, and if others have the opportunity, you can look online and see the sessions and what's being presented. And please get a hold of Ms. Weaver. Second, the River Raisin National Battlefield Park commemoration is coming up later in the month. It's on Saturday, January 21st, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I know we're going to meet again, but I'd like to give these announcements ahead of time for those that are listening, and also for the council members for your schedules. As we've talked about, we're going to have a special city council meeting. Special work session. I'll get that correct. On Saturday, January 28th from 9 a.m. We usually get done by noon or 12:30, but that's kind of the time frame and the date. Please be mindful of that. If there's some obligations that might restrict that, please let the administration know. And my last item, I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Pastu and actually Clerk Lavoie as well. You know, we're here in our 2023, and every term we set goals and objectives. So we've been through a year. So looking to maybe an opportunity at a work session to review our goals and objectives. It's not about the accomplishments of what yet we have time to do that are on there. It's a good opportunity to review that some items that we've talked about that still are pending, maybe an opportunity to finalize those, because that's what we set as our goals and objectives for this term, and I think that we have time to achieve all of them. And we've done so many, and I think it's a good review, not only for us to know where we are, but where we're going for the final year of this term, but also let the residents know that there's items that we've achieved and presented and where we're going in the future. So I'll stop there. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
Just Happy New Year. I have no other comments.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. The one item next Monday night, you have the Planning Commission, Citizens Planning Commission is going to receive a presentation related to the Orchard East program, of which I think we're going to handle staff-wise, and the Heritage Corridor as well. Prior to the meeting, Clerk Lavoie and I discussed it a little bit with Mayor Clark, and we'll probably post it as a joint meeting in that there may be a quorum representing the city council at that session. It'll still be a Citizens Planning Commission meeting, but the presentation itself may bring council members to attend, and so we just have to post that as a potential quorum. So other than that, nothing else, Your Honor.
Very good. Next is citizens' comments. Any comments from those present here this evening? Seeing no comments. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Grave?
Yes.
Vining? Germaini?
Yes.
Wilmore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes, thank you.